The year was 1694, and behind the gilded walls of Alden Castle, a woman who had once commanded the attention of European courts now lived in absolute isolation. Her crime was not murder, not treason, not witchcraft, but something far more dangerous in the eyes of her captors. She had dared to love. Sophia Dorothea of Celle, former Electoral Princess of Hanover, had become the most famous prisoner in all of Germany. Her very existence, a carefully guarded secret that would haunt the House of Hanover for decades to come. What began as a political marriage designed to unite two German principalities had transformed into one of history's most notorious scandals, involving forbidden passion, international intrigue, and a punishment so severe that it would echo through the corridors of power across Europe. The woman who would one day have been Queen of England instead found herself locked away in a fortress, her name erased from official records, her children forbidden from speaking of her, and her fate sealed by a court conspiracy that reached the highest levels of German nobility. But how did a princess, born into privilege and married into one of Europe's most ambitious dynasties, find herself condemned to a living death that would last 32 years? The answer lies in a web of political machinations, personal vendettas, and a love affair that threatened to topple kingdoms. Today, we strip away centuries of royal propaganda to examine the brutal reality of Sophia Dorothea's imprisonment and the dark forces that conspired to destroy her. To understand the horror that awaited Sophia Dorothea, we must first grasp the world that created her tragedy. The Holy Roman Empire of the late 17th century was a patchwork of competing principalities, where marriage was the ultimate diplomatic weapon and women were currency in transactions between ambitious rulers. Born in 1666 to Georg Wilhelm, Duke of Brunswick-Lüneburg, and his morganatic wife Eleonore d'Olbreuse, Sophia Dorothea entered a world where her very legitimacy was questioned from birth. Her mother, a French Huguenot refugee, had captured the Duke's heart, but not his political calculations. Their marriage was initially morganatic, meaning Eleonore could not share her husband's rank or pass noble status to their children. This precarious beginning would shape every aspect of Sophia Dorothea's life, creating vulnerabilities that her enemies would later exploit with devastating efficiency. The young princess grew up beautiful, intelligent, and acutely aware that her position depended entirely on the whims of men who saw her as a valuable asset rather than a human being. The match that would seal her fate was arranged when she was just 16 years old. Georg Ludwig, Electoral Prince of Hanover, needed a wife to cement his family's claims to greater power, while Sophia Dorothea's father needed political allies. The marriage contract, signed in 1682, was a masterpiece of cold calculation, uniting the Brunswick lands under Hanoverian control, while providing Georg Ludwig with a bride whose questionable birth could be overlooked in exchange for territorial gains. From the moment of their first meeting, the couple's incompatibility was obvious to everyone except the men who had arranged their union. Georg Ludwig was a calculating, emotionally distant man whose interests lay in military campaigns and political maneuvering rather than domestic happiness. Sophia Dorothea, by contrast, was vivacious, cultured, and possessed of a romantic temperament that chafed against the rigid formalities of Hanoverian court life. Their wedding ceremony in November 1682 was a glittering affair that masked the fundamental mismatch between two people who would never understand each other. The early years of marriage produced the required heirs, Georg August in 1683 and Sophia Dorothea in 1687, but little else in the way of marital harmony. Georg Ludwig spent increasing amounts of time away from Hanover, pursuing military glory and maintaining a very public relationship with his mistress, Melusine von der Schulenburg. This arrangement suited him perfectly, providing him with domestic stability through his wife, while allowing him the freedom to pursue his actual interests elsewhere. For Sophia Dorothea, however, this cold marriage became a prison of growing desperation. Court life at Hanover was suffocatingly formal. dominated by her mother-in-law, Sophia of the Palatinate, a formidable woman who viewed her daughter-in-law with barely concealed disdain. The electoral princess found herself increasingly isolated, her French mannerisms and Catholic sympathies marking her as foreign in a court that prized German Protestant values above all else. It was into this atmosphere of emotional starvation that Count Philipp Christoph von Königsmarck arrived in 1688, a Swedish nobleman with a reputation for both military prowess and romantic adventures. Königsmarck was everything that Georg Ludwig was not: charming, cultured, devastatingly handsome, and possessed of the kind of passionate nature that resonated with Sophia Dorothea's starved emotions. Their initial encounters at court functions quickly evolved into something far more dangerous. The Count had come to Hanover in service to the electoral family, but his true conquest would not be military territories, but the heart of the most isolated woman in the Germanic courts. Their romance began with the elaborate courtesies expected between nobles, formal conversations, carefully chaperoned meetings, and the exchange of literary works that allowed for more personal communication than direct speech would permit. But beneath these social niceties, a genuine emotional connection was forming that would prove catastrophic for both participants. By 1690, their relationship had evolved beyond mere flirtation into a full-scale love affair that consumed both participants with an intensity that terrified and exhilarated them in equal measure. Sophia Dorothea, who had spent 8 years in a loveless marriage, finally found someone who saw her as more than a political asset. Königsmarck, despite his reputation as a libertine, appeared genuinely devoted to a woman whose beauty was matched by her intelligence and whose tragic circumstances appealed to his romantic sensibilities. Their correspondence, much of which would later be used as evidence against them, reveals the depth of their emotional involvement. These were not the casual exchanges of a typical aristocratic affair, but the passionate outpourings of two people who had found in each other a completion they had never experienced before. Sophia Dorothea wrote to her lover with an abandon that would have shocked her contemporaries, expressing not just physical desire, but genuine intellectual and emotional intimacy. The lovers developed an elaborate system of secret meetings, coded messages, and trusted intermediaries that allowed them to maintain their relationship. Despite the constant surveillance of court life, they met in garden pavilions during social gatherings, arranged clandestine encounters in the homes of sympathetic nobles, and maintained their correspondence through a network of servants and allies who were either genuinely loyal or sufficiently compensated to ensure their silence. But such secrets could not remain hidden indefinitely in a court where everyone watched everyone else for signs of advantage or weakness. By 1693, rumors of the affair had begun circulating among the Hanoverian nobility, creating a scandal that threatened not just the participants, but the political stability that the marriage had been designed to ensure. Georg Ludwig, who might have been expected to react with violent jealousy, instead approached the situation with the same cold calculation he applied to military campaigns. The electoral prince was not particularly concerned about his wife's infidelity from an emotional standpoint. His own relationship with Melusine von der Schulenburg made him hardly qualified to demand marital fidelity. But the political implications of Sophia Dorothea's affair were potentially catastrophic. If she were to become pregnant by her lover, the succession to the electoral throne could be compromised. More immediately, the scandal provided ammunition for political enemies who might use it to challenge Hanoverian legitimacy at a time when the family's ambitions extended far beyond their German territories. The situation became critical in early 1694 when intercepted correspondence confirmed what court gossips had long suspected. The letters between Sophia Dorothea and Königsmarck were not merely evidence of an affair, but proof of a relationship so intense that it threatened to overshadow all other considerations in their lives. More dangerously, some of the correspondence suggested that the lovers had discussed the possibility of fleeing together, abandoning their positions and responsibilities for a life of exile funded by Königsmarck's considerable personal wealth. Such a plan, if implemented, would have created a scandal that could have destroyed the House of Hanover's carefully cultivated reputation. Just as they were positioning themselves for even greater power, the family's ambitions extended to the English succession, where Sophia of the Palatinate stood as a potential heir to the throne of Great Britain. A public divorce involving adultery and abandonment of duty would have provided ammunition for political enemies and potentially derailed these dynastic ambitions entirely. The response from the Hanoverian court was swift and merciless. Rather than risk the public exposure that would accompany a formal trial or divorce proceedings, they chose a more direct approach that would eliminate the problem while maintaining the facade of propriety that royal politics demanded. On the night of July 1, 1694, Count Philipp Christoph von Königsmarck vanished from the face of the earth. He had entered the Ladislaus Palace in Hanover for what he believed would be a final clandestine meeting with Sophia Dorothea before their planned escape together. He never emerged. No body was ever found. No official explanation was ever given, and his name was immediately struck from all court records, as if he had never existed at all. The Count's disappearance was orchestrated with the precision of a military operation. 4 trusted members of Georg Ludwig's inner circle, men whose loyalty had been tested in countless political crises, surrounded Königsmarck as he made his way through the palace corridors that night. Contemporary accounts, pieced together from fragmentary evidence discovered centuries later, suggest the confrontation was brief and brutal. The Swedish nobleman, despite his military training and physical prowess, was overwhelmed by attackers who had planned every detail of the ambush. What followed was a systematic erasure that demonstrated the terrifying efficiency of royal power when applied without mercy. Königsmarck's body was reportedly dismembered and buried beneath the palace floorboards, though some accounts suggest it was dissolved in lime and disposed of in the palace gardens. His personal effects were confiscated and destroyed, his correspondence seized and locked away in archives that would remain sealed for centuries. Most chillingly, his servants were either bought off with substantial payments or simply disappeared themselves, ensuring that no witnesses remained to tell the story of that night. The psychological warfare against Sophia Dorothea began immediately after her lover's disappearance. She was not informed of Königsmarck's fate directly, but instead subjected to a campaign of deliberate uncertainty that was designed to break her spirit through hope and despair in equal measure. Palace officials would make cryptic references to the Count having departed on urgent business, while others would hint darkly at his unfortunate circumstances. This calculated ambiguity served a dual purpose. It prevented Sophia Dorothea from grieving properly, while keeping alive the possibility that her lover might still return. For weeks, the electoral princess clung to the belief that Königsmarck had simply been forced to flee Hanover ahead of schedule, perhaps to arrange their escape route or secure financial resources for their planned elopement. She continued writing letters to addresses where she believed he might be hiding, each one more desperate than the last, as the silence stretched on without explanation. These letters, intercepted by court officials, revealed the full extent of her emotional dependence on a man who was already decomposing beneath the palace floors. The formal end of Sophia Dorothea's freedom came in December 1694, when she was presented with divorce papers that detailed charges of adultery, abandonment of duty, and conduct unbecoming to her royal station. The legal proceedings were a masterpiece of judicial theater, designed to provide a veneer of legitimacy to what was essentially a political execution. She was not permitted legal representation, nor was she allowed to confront her accusers or examine the evidence against her. The trial was conducted in her absence, with court officials reading prepared statements that painted her as a wanton woman who had betrayed not just her marriage vows, but her duty to the state itself. The story of Sophia Dorothea of Celle stands as a chilling reminder of how power operates when human lives become obstacles to political ambition. For 32 years, she would remain imprisoned in Alden Castle, forbidden from seeing her children, denied visitors, and erased from official history as if she had never existed. Her crime was not treason or murder, but the audacity to seek love in a world that saw women as mere chess pieces in dynastic games. While her husband, Georg Ludwig, would eventually become King George I of England, Sophia Dorothea died in captivity in 1726, her story buried beneath centuries of royal propaganda. Today, her tragic fate serves as a haunting testament to the price of defying those who mistake cruelty for strength and the enduring power of the human species, writ to survive even the darkest chapters of history.